The first item of business is portfolio questions, and can I remind members that questions 1 and 3 are grouped together, and that I'll take any supplementaries on these questions after both have been answered. And at question number 1, I call Claire Adamson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of the potential impact on Scotland's economic growth of the UK Government White Paper on immigration.
Deputy First Minister.
The UK Government Immigration White Paper completely fails to account for Scotland's distinct demographic or economic needs. Scotland's public services, communities and economy all benefit from inward migration. The decision to end international care worker recruitment and planned changes to the graduate visa and skilled worker visa are short-sighted, and they will prove damaging to sectors which necessarily rely on international talent.
Claire Adamson.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for her answer. The Scottish Chamber of Commerce stated that UK Government plans for immigration present a serious challenge for Scotland's economy and workforce. The Labour Government's rhetoric is demonising friends, neighbours and loved ones who have made their home here and are a valued part of Scottish society. Has the UK Government provided any assurance over their plans to Scottish ministers, given that business leaders and public services have warned that the reforms will cause labour shortages and undermine business confidence?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, yesterday the First Minister met representatives from social care, education, the rural economy, tourism, businesses and local government to discuss the implications of the UK Government's Immigration White Paper. And we continue to urgently engage with the UK Government, highlighting the potentially deeply damaging impact that their measures will have on public services, communities and economy, much of which has been backed up by other stakeholders in the press. Scotland's working age population is growing only because of migration, and we call on the UK Government to recognise the distinct migration needs facing Scotland and work with us to deliver tailored migration solutions for Scotland.
Question number 3, John Mason.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of the potential impact on Scotland's labour market of the Prime Minister's recent statement on immigration policy.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, we expect the UK Immigration White Paper to have a damaging effect on Scotland's economy because it fails to account for Scotland's distinct demographic or labour market needs. And our ambition is to ensure that immigration delivers for Scotland as well as the rest of the UK. Our working age population is growing only because of migration, and we want to see a tailored migration solution for Scotland.
John Mason.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for that reply. She mentions other parts of the UK, and I wonder if she's had any discussions with other parts of the UK, because even last time I was in the Lake District, restaurants and shops were closing early, presumably because they did not have enough staff. And has she pointed out to the UK Government that other countries like Canada and Australia do have regional or state migration policies?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, not only have we pointed out the fact that other countries allow for distinct immigration solutions on a state basis, but we've also pointed out the comments from stakeholders about their particular needs. John Mason mentioned the hospitality industry. The same could be said for the food and drink industry and the care sector as well. We previously worked with stakeholders in rural and island Scotland to design a rural visa pilot proposal, which would reflect the needs of communities and economies, and there is ongoing disappointment from businesses in particular that potential solution continues to be ignored.
Murdo Fraser.
Thank you. Over the last number of years, net inward migration into the United Kingdom has been at record levels. Indeed, it has more than doubled since Brexit, contrary to expectations. But we know that relatively few of these new migrants actually come to settle in Scotland compared to other parts of the United Kingdom. Why does the Deputy First Minister believe this is the case?
Deputy First Minister.
In terms of the figures, we've seen payrolled employments held by non-EU nationals in Scotland rising since 2020. And in terms of the most recent data we have from HMRC, when it comes to tax rates, we continue to see on average just over 4,000 more people moving in than leaving across different tax thresholds. So that demonstrates that Scotland is an attractive place to work. I think the point that we are making, which I think Murdo Fraser would hear also from businesses, is about a tailored approach where there are particular sectors. Soft fruits was one obvious sector in the aftermath of Brexit that have repeatedly called for a tailored migration solution so that businesses and industry can recruit individuals with specific needs which are currently restricted because of either salary thresholds or otherwise imposed by the UK Government.
Jamie Green.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Glenfield Care Home in Greenock is earmarked for closure, citing recruitment issues and the national insurance hike as primary reasons. Another care home manager, Campbell Snowdon House, warned that other care homes in my region will follow. But he also admonished politicians against using language like low-skilled workers when it comes to the care sector, saying that these are highly skilled jobs and it's a very respectable career indeed. Can I ask what the Scottish Government's plan B is if this white paper comes to pass? How do we ensure that vital lifeline sectors, such as the care sector, will have the staff they need to survive?
Well, Jamie Green is absolutely right to identify the double hit of the immigration white paper as well as the hike to national insurance contributions. And both of those could have devastating impacts on the care sector. That's not just my view, that's Donald McCaskill's view and the views of others who work in this sector. So the data is very stark, the evidence is clear, we have enough qualitative anecdotal evidence to illustrate what the impact could be, and he's absolutely right to distinguish from sort of low skilled worker or otherwise when we know how critical it is that we have a workforce in the care sector, and there are few things as important to us as a society than the care of vulnerable people.
Question number 2, Elena Whittam.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry is investigating abuse experienced by children in care in Scotland between 1930 and 2014. The inquiry has reviewed a wide range of care settings and to date has completed 8 phases of investigation. It's now commenced Phase 9, focused on healthcare and specialist schools, and when the inquiry concludes, it will publish a final report that may make recommendations to improve practice, policy and legislation, and we are committed to carefully considering the inquiry's findings and recommendations.
Elena Whittam.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for that answer. Having heard several harrowing experiences of historic abuse from constituents who had been placed in care as children, can the Cabinet Secretary advise the Chamber what steps the Scottish Government is taking to ensure that survivors of such abuse receive adequate support following their participation in the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry as they find their voices to relive their horrific childhood experiences, the toll of which has haunted many throughout their adult lives?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, Elena Whittam raises a really important issue, and having engaged directly and personally with survivors, I recognise the importance of the point that she makes, and to acknowledge the courage of survivors who have shared their experiences with the inquiry. Recognising that impact of trauma that she identifies, the inquiry follows a trauma-informed approach to ensure dignity, respect and to seek to minimise re-traumatisation. We are supporting survivors through initiatives like the Future Pathways initiative and the Survivors of Childhood Abuse Support Fund, which fund trauma-informed services. And we want to work with partners and survivor-led organisations to ensure that those services are accessible, that they are responsive and they are person-centred.
Question number 4, Martin Whitfield.
Very grateful, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it's made of the effectiveness of its current export and investment support policies.
Minister Richard Lockhead.
The Scottish Government subjects its export and inward investment policies to regular evaluation, with the most recent independent review conducted by Aston University and published on the Scottish Government's website. Our export and inward investment programmes are measured and tracked through robust data and analysis from a range of sources, including HMRC, Export Statistics Scotland, Scottish Enterprise and EY as well. Our evidence-based approach to export promotion and inward investment has generated £1.6 billion of additional overseas sales over 3 years and maintains Scotland's position as the most attractive location outside of London for inward investment over the past 9 years.
Martin Whitfield.
I'm grateful to the Minister for that response. The Scottish Government has attacked the EU deal recently, saying it doesn't go far enough, but in the same breath welcomes the progress on SPS checks, energy cooperation, youth mobility and trade in services, along with the steel industry elsewhere. So while the UK Government is finally delivering for Scottish exporters, cutting red tape on food exports, amongst other things, can the Scottish Government confirm it will hit its target of 25% of GDP by 2029 being made up of exports?
Minister.
I might wish to advise the member to speak to the Scottish fishing industry about their view of the deal struck with the EU. But of course, it had elements in it that we welcome, because we welcome any reduction of barriers with trade with the European Union, which is Scotland's biggest export market. But nothing makes up for membership of the European Union in terms of what's been achieved in that deal, albeit we wait for full details to come from the UK Government. In terms of the ambitious target set for exports in Scotland, it is indeed ambitious. Of course, since it was set in 2019, there's been a number of global challenges. COVID and Brexit itself, of course, as well as conflicts around the world and other turbulent issues that affected Scotland and other countries in terms of international trade. But, of course, the programme for government did include a lot more support for increasing exports. We recognise the importance of achieving that target. There's more resources going to the Scottish Chamber of Commerce for their trade missions, for instance, and there's a 6-point export plan. So we're confident we'll make very good progress towards that target, and that's why we address this very important issue in the programme for government.
Colin Beattie.
Does the Minister agree with me that during such turbulent economic times, it's more important than ever to champion our world-class Scottish products, such as salmon and whisky? And how can the Minister outline how measures in the programme for government, such as the Scottish Government's new 6-point export plan, assist this?
Minister.
Colin Beattie raises a very important point, which is that now is the time to give more attention to global trade and not to pull back in response to the current challenges. And he is also right to highlight the amazing produce we have in this country in terms of Scottish salmon, Scottish seafood, Scotch whisky, in relation to food and drink products that the member mentioned. I've just returned in the last few weeks from a trade mission to Japan, where quite clearly there has been an increase of seafood exports to that country, a dramatic increase in Scottish mackerel going to the Japanese market, and also we're looking at Scottish salmon as well as whisky, and there seems to be an ever-increasing appetite for Scottish produce in the Japanese market, and we're finding that story has been replicated around the world. So the member's right that we have great produce and we have to give more support than ever, as we discussed at the Scottish Whisky Association reception last night in Parliament as well.
Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What assessment of the impact on trade and investment has the Minister made on the possible effects of the imposition of a hard border between Scotland and the rest of the UK?
Minister.
Well, of course, trade with the rest of the UK is very important to Scotland, and of course we want that to continue. But trade is also very important with the European Union, which is our biggest export market. In terms of countries, it's the US. In terms of the biggest overall partner, it's the European Union. And therefore, we have to make sure we're exporting as much as possible to the European Union and minimising the barriers as well, but also continue the very healthy trade we have with the rest of the UK.
Willie Rennie.
The Minister will have seen reports this week about Sanjeev Gupta's group and its appeal in the courts to fend off an attempt to close down the mills, particularly in England. That raises concerns for me about the investments in Scotland. So what is the Minister doing in terms of communication with the GFG Alliance to do with Alvan's group, but also the Liberty Steel in DL? Because these are important plans, and so far I've heard nothing from the Government.
Minister.
Well, I just want to assure the member we, of course, pay close attention to those issues all the time, and we will continue to do so.
Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Analysis from Spice from late last year shows that the value of international exports from Scotland remains below the Scottish Government's target of 25%, and the rest of the UK still amounts for most of Scotland's services and manufacturing exports. In light of this, what action is the Minister taking to strengthen this vital internal export market, and how are you working with the Department of Business and Trade to ensure that the Scottish products have access to competitive international markets?
Minister.
Thanks. I very much welcome the focus on increasing Scottish exports, and of course we have to be clear the target for 25% of GDP in terms of exports is for 2029, and we're only in 2025. So we are putting in place a lot of measures to try and achieve that ambitious target, as I mentioned before, and that's why there's an additional emphasis on supporting exports and indeed global trade in the programme for government the First Minister recently published, which I hope he welcomes. It's been warmly welcomed by the Scottish Chamber of Commerce, that additional resource they're getting, and we really have to work flat out to make the most of our export opportunities, and that should be our best response to the turbulent global trade at the moment.
Question number 5, Richard Leonard.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And can I remind members of my voluntary register of trade union interests to ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of the economic impact of the closure of the Grangemouth oil refinery?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, a robust and independent analysis of the economic contribution of the Grangemouth refinery was conducted by PwC, and the findings of that assessment were published in August 2024. Our analysis notes that the economic value of the Grangemouth refinery, its supply chain and employee spending was estimated to be £403.6 million in 2023. However, the economic contribution of the refinery would not have been possible without the dedicated and highly skilled workforce, and so I wish again to pay tribute to them and to confirm my support for them at this difficult time.
Richard Leonard.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer? Today's inaugural Grangemouth Investment Task Force meeting is welcome, but the next set of refinery workers are due to leave the site, their jobs declared redundant, by the 31st of May. So the Cabinet Secretary knows that time is of the essence. So to accelerate the chances of retaining work and jobs, will the Government push for an immediate independent review of the assets at the refinery, and will the Cabinet Secretary update Parliament this afternoon on those 66 potential investors previously named and outline what can be done to speed this investment process up?
Deputy First Minister.
On the second question about the progress on the 60-plus interests, perhaps I could take that offline and give Richard Leonard and other MSPs an update on progress, because obviously this is quite a fast moving and I don't want to give him out-of-date information. In terms of the independent review of the asset, that is something that we have pushed for. We know that that has been one of the big asks from the union, so it is something that we are pushing for. And on the first point around time being of the essence because of the impending deadline of the 31st of May, he's absolutely right, and that's why we are keen to try and look for the opportunities through Project Willow that can be delivered as quickly as possible, because he will know, and I've said it before, that we think the closure of the refinery is premature.
Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. A key element in securing a green industrial future for the Grangemouth site is the development of carbon capture in Scotland, which is why it's now vital that the UK Government provides support not only to carbon capture projects in England, but also the Acorn project. But does the Deputy First Minister agree with me that it's essential that the UK Government take swift and urgent action to support Acorn which in turn will actually help us deliver the future that Grangemouth actually deserves?
Deputy First Minister.
I agree. We are still waiting a final decision on Acorn and confirmation of the full funding package and timeline. There are so many issues that are contingent on Acorn getting the green light, including Grangemouth's future, but also other issues related to meeting our climate change targets and the energy transition. So we urge the Chancellor to greenlight the project in the upcoming spending review, which is only a matter of weeks away, and that would unlock more than £80 million committed by this Government's First Minister, which was committed in the most recent programme for government.
Question number 6, Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Economy Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues regarding the potential impact on businesses and residents in the Highlands should a visitor levy be introduced.
Mr Ivan McKee.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I'm answering the question as the Minister responsible for the Visitor Levy. The Visitor Levy Act requires local authorities to prepare and publicise an assessment of the impact of any proposals to introduce a visitor levy, including on local businesses and residents. I regularly discuss a range of issues with my ministerial colleagues, and I hope to shortly meet with Ms Forbes in her MSP capacity and with Highland Council representatives to discuss the possible introduction of a visitor levy as detailed in the Visitor Levy Act passed last year in Highland Council authority area.
Douglas Ross.
I understand Ivan McKee is the Minister responsible, but given the portfolio team in front of us today, I think it's disappointing that a question about the Highlands is answered by the only Minister who's not representing part of the Highlands. But does Ivan McKee accept the severe criticisms there have been about the potential for a visitor levy, including from the Highland Hotel Associations, who just this week warned that it is exceptionally frightening for a tourism tax to be introduced in the Highlands? And does he also accept that this will not just impact tourists coming to visit the area, but local residents who have to travel from rural areas for overnight stays, for potential early morning hospital appointments, also have to pay, and they shouldn't just have to rely on clawing this money back? They should be exempt from the very beginning.
Minister.
Well, first of all, the reason Ms Forbes hasn't answered the question is because she has a constituency interest, and I think Douglas Ross will understand that situation, and I am the Minister responsible for the visitor levy. I'm well aware of the concern that has been raised in the Highlands in particular, but elsewhere as well. Indeed, I've had a series of meetings with the Scottish Tourism Alliance and with the Association of Scottish Self-Caterers and others with regards to the issues that the levy can raise for small businesses in particular. But as the member is aware, the responsibility for implementing a levy lies with the local authority, and there are a range of provisions within the Act that allow the local authority to design a system that is able to cater to the needs of local businesses. But I'm very keen to continue to engage with members, with local authorities, with industry representatives as we seek to take this legislation forward, as council seek to implement or not in their local areas.
Thank you, colleagues. Let's keep our questions and responses concise. Fergus Ewing.
All four ministers know I've opposed this tax from the outset and voted against it. It's a percentage tax upon which there will be additional VAT payable, two sets of tax. The minister knows that I've argued that this is uncollectible, is going to lead to a fiasco, that nobody has worked out how to collect it, that the IT systems that will be necessary to administer it do not exist. Does the minister agree with me that this may cause the death knell of many hard-working, excellent bed and breakfast establishments in the Highlands and throughout the whole country? And he's been told this again and again. So will he call a halt to this outrageous and poorly designed tax?
Minister.
Well, the member will be aware that it's up to local authorities to choose whether or not to take the tax forward. I know that Highland Council proceeded with consultation, are now reflecting on the response they've had to that, and as I said, I'll be meeting shortly with Highland Council representatives to discuss where they are in that regard and the options available to them. So the tax is obviously in legislation, as the member is aware, and Edinburgh City Council will be the first council intending to take the tax forward next year, and as I say, we'll continue to engage with other councils as we learn from that implementation to understand what their plans are in their own local areas.
Colette Stevenson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Visitor levies are very common in many parts of the world, including 21 European countries, and bring benefits to visitors and residents alike, especially in high-traffic tourist destinations. Will the Minister say more about how the decision to empower local government could benefit communities and businesses across Scotland?
Minister.
Yeah, the Visitor Levy Scotland Act gives local government the most significant new powers in this regard since devolution. It provides businesses the opportunity to work with their local council to generate funds to enhance facilities frequently used by visitors and residents alike. And funds can also be used to promote culture and heritage events to extend the tourist season and drive more business and economic activity. Many business and business organisations absolutely recognise the value that the levy can bring. The levy will help, therefore, sustain and enhance the visitor experience, making destinations more attractive and competitive.
Question number 7, Katie Clark.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on what impact the National Strategy for Economic Transformation is having on the economy of West Scotland region.
Minister Richard Lockhead.
Our National Strategy for Economic Transformation outlines our vision for economic growth and includes a programme to make Scotland's regions and communities more productive, innovative and prosperous. Reports on progress are made annually. We have committed to providing £628 million of funding to the 3 regional growth deals across the west of Scotland, and we're enabling the region's economic partnerships to create jobs and help make the area an attractive place to live and work, including committing £2 million in 25-26 to meet Glasgow City regional skills needs in the maritime and engineering skills sectors.
Katie Clark.
North Ayrshire has the lowest job density in Scotland. Does the Minister believe that the Scottish Government is doing enough to prioritise North Ayrshire, given the poor levels of job density? And what more does he think could be done to encourage investment and well-paid jobs into the area?
Minister.
Well, yes, we want to support measures that will help create jobs and prosperity in that area, and of course we all have that as a priority. In terms of the Ayrshire growth deal, their specific North Ayrshire capital projects include the £9.5 million marine tourism programme, which will deliver STEP ashore facilities for both Arran and Cumbria, and the £9 million Greater Harbour project, which will reinvigorate Irvin's Maritime Mile, to give some examples. But of course we always have to look for more examples, and it is an important issue the member mentions. We have the strategy, we have the programme for government, a number of measures in there as well, and hopefully we can make good progress in helping the people in North Ayrshire.
Thank you. Question number 8 has been withdrawn. We move to the second portfolio of the afternoon, Finance and Local Government. Question number 1 is not lodged. At question number 2, I call Gordon MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what engagement it has had with the UK Government regarding the impact of the increase to employers' national insurance contributions on local government finances.
Cabinet Secretary Shona Robertson.
I'm grateful to COSLA and individual local authorities for their support in urging the UK Government to fully fund the tax increase. We're deeply disappointed that the UK Government has failed to recognise that the Scottish Government has prioritised investment in our public services and public sector workers. We are now effectively being punished for those decisions, but we have provided an additional £144 million of funding and will continue to work in partnership with local government to mitigate the impact of the UK Government's decision on frontline services.
Gordon MacDonald.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. Edinburgh Council will see a £19 million increase in employers' national insurance contributions because of the decision by the Labour Government to increase this jobs tax. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that the Labour Government must act urgently and agree to fully fund the public purse for these additional costs? And will she join me in calling on Scottish Labour MSPs to stand up for Scotland and put pressure on their Westminster Labour colleagues to reverse this ill-thought-through decision which is impacting on the delivery of public services?
On matters for which the Cabinet Secretary has responsibility.
So I do agree with that. We've consistently made clear that the UK Government must fully fund the additional costs. However, they have confirmed that they intend to only provide a Barnett share, which would fail to reflect Scotland's larger public sector per person than the rest of the UK. They have confirmed will receive £339 million for the additional costs of increased employer national insurance, and that's far short, of course, of the more than £700 million bill that we estimate public services will face. So we have the challenge of having to divert money from frontline services to cover the additional costs, and it's an outcome that I'm sure no one in this Parliament wants to see.
Coy.
The Finance Secretary reverts to type and blames Westminster, and despite the negative consequences of the national insurance increase, the financial crisis facing councils is nothing new and stems from years of sustained underfunding from this SNP government. Now, across Scotland, councils face budget shortfalls amounting to well over £500 million, with 10% council tax increases the norm, and many councils raiding what's left of their reserves. So why does the Minister still blame others and continue to defend her government's record when we all know that the cash crisis facing councils is down to this SNP government?
Well,
in relation to this substantive question, Cabinet Secretary.
The responsibility for the hike in employers' national insurance contributions is a Westminster decision made by the UK Government. That is a fact. It's not about trying to shift blame. It's just a statement of fact that in the next breath, Craig Hoy criticises the hike in employers' national insurance contributions. In terms of council funding, of course, the £1 billion tax cuts, unfunded tax cuts that Craig Hoy wants to see would negatively impact on council funding. And of course, we see yet again the Tories coming here to this chamber demanding more money for local government and then opposing measures like the visitor levy, which of course will help local authorities raise much needed
the
revenue.
Cabinet Secretary.
There is no consistency whatsoever from the Tory benches, but we shouldn't be surprised by that.
Question number 3, Colin Beattie.
To ask the Scottish Government regarding its decisions on local authority budget allocations, what discussions has it had with Mid Lothian and East Lothian councils regarding any impact on their budgets as a result of providing support in schools for additional support needs?
Cabinet Secretary Shona Robertson.
The Scottish Government continues to meet with COSLA and individual local authorities on a regular basis to cover a range of topics, including current and future budget pressures. The 2025-26 budget provides an additional £29 million of funding for local and national programmes to support the recruitment and retention of the additional support needs workforce.
Colin Beattie.
Thank you for that answer. With the rise in ASN demand across the country, has the Scottish Government considered any changes to the local authority funding formula to better reflect and support local authorities with this rise?
Colin Beattie, Cabinet Secretary.
So the local government needs-based formula used to distribute the funding available for local government uses the most up-to-date data available to ensure changes in circumstances are accurately reflected as quickly as possible. The formula is kept under constant review through the Settlement and Distribution Group. And of course, the Scottish Government is always open to suggestions to improve the funding formula. However, proposals must properly come through COSLA in the first instance.
Pam Gossel.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I have spoken to many concerned parents and teachers who have said that after-school care for children with additional support needs is almost impossible to find, adding an extra layer of stress to the lives of parents and children. After-school care providers have neither the capacity nor the budget to fund the specialist staff required to look after the children with additional needs. We cannot ignore the needs of these children. Councils need to be properly funded. Will the Cabinet Secretary wake up to reality, look these parents in the eyes and say why they are failing future generations?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, let me say a couple of things to Pam Gossel. First of all, we recognise the important services provided by local authorities, which is why they have received record funding of over £15 billion, something put at risk by Pam Gossel's support for £1 billion of unfunded tax cuts that would affect local government funding. The Tories don't like to hear the facts, but I will not stop repeating the facts because facts
Let's hear
matter.
the Cabinet Secretary.
Facts matter. The after-school care point that Pam Gossel makes is an important one, and that's why we have provided an additional £29 million of funding. That is on top of the existing funding for special needs provision that local government has. Now, how local government spends that money in terms of each local authority decisions, of course, is down to each local council. And if they want to prioritise after-school care for children with special needs, then of course that is something that they can do.
Question number 4, Jamie Halcrow-Johnston.
To ask the Scottish Government what it estimates the cost to local authorities has been since May 2021 of dealing with planning applications and appeals related to new energy infrastructure such as wind farms, pylons and battery storage facilities.
Mr Ivan McKee.
The Scottish Government does not hold that specific information. However, I fully recognise the financial and capacity pressures on the system, and that's why I raised planning fees last December and have further increases coming into effect next month. Where applications for energy developments are made to the Scottish Government under the Electricity Act, planning authorities receive half of the fee to cover the cost of their input. Additionally, the National Planning Hub is offering support to authorities, including capacity and access to expertise to help them determine applications for renewable energy and indeed housing projects.
Micheál Johnston.
I'm surprised the Minister doesn't have a figure for that. We do know that too many of our councils are struggling under the weight of planning applications for energy infrastructure, and it's becoming an increasing drain on their resources. But this is also a massive challenge for those local residents and local communities who face these developments right on their door. On Saturday afternoon, I met with residents impacted by SSEN's proposed substation at Fenallen. Some are already looking to move away, but being told interest in their homes is impacted by the development. Others want to stay and fight the development, but feel they don't have the resource or expertise to do so. So can I ask the Minister, does the Scottish Government provide any support to local communities to access legal and regulatory advice? Or does it just expect local people to foot the bill for protecting their homes and their local communities?
Minister.
Well, I think the member will appreciate that I can't engage obviously in any discussion in any specifics, including the specific case that he raised. But I think what we're also seeing, and I think this is every Conservative member that's spoken this afternoon, has either been calling for more resources for local government or tax cuts, and in some cases calling for both of those. In terms of the specific ask, I can get back to him with the detail of what is available in that regard.
Question number 5, Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, President Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how much additional funding Inverclyde Council has received since 2016, over and above its annual funding allocations.
Cabinet Secretary Shona Robertson.
Funding such as city and region deals is often allocated to regions and therefore not attributable to individual local authorities, even where all local partners directly benefit from the investment. In 2025-26 alone, almost £867 million of funding will be provided to local government over and above the record funding settlement. Inverclyde will receive a share of that funding and in recent years has benefited from funding to expand the quayside and build a new visitor centre, to further expand the Greenock Ocean Terminal, alongside investment in the learning estate such as the development at Kilmacombe and St Patrick's primary schools.
Stuart McMillan.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for that reply, and it certainly does demonstrate that the Scottish Government have provided additional funding to Inverclyde over and above the budget settlement, which I warmly welcome. But there are a range of projects that the Inverclyde Socio-Economic Task Force, which I co-chair, have presented to the Scottish Government as they have the potential to bring benefits to the community. Will the Cabinet Secretary give an assurance that these projects are being considered, notwithstanding some of the financial challenges the Scottish Government face?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, can I first of all recognise the importance of the work of the task force of course Stuart McMillan will be aware the Minister for Employment and Investment has participated in meetings of the task force. The Scottish Government is aware of the project funding requests made by the task force and will consider any proposal with the potential to drive growth and create high quality employment opportunities.
Question number 6, Stephen Kerr.
To ask the Scottish Government what its policy is on the impact of its Scottish income tax policy on the median income in Scotland in light of this estimated to be £29,750 in 2025-26 based on its current policy.
Cabinet Secretary.
Anyone with an income less than £30,000 will pay less income tax in Scotland than they would otherwise if they lived elsewhere in the UK. That accounts for more than half of Scottish income taxpayers.
Stephen Kerr.
Well, the median salary in Scotland is projected to be £29,750, which is well below the UK figure of £37,480. And that is a significant gap. Yet Scottish workers face higher taxes if they try to earn more. The Cabinet Secretary needs to learn that low pay is not a virtue and taxing aspiration is no route to growth. Does the Cabinet Secretary accept that Scotland's income tax policy unfairly burdens working people, discourages ambition and undermines our competitiveness by making it harder for individuals and families to get ahead?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, it's refreshing to hear a Tory say that they don't support low pay, given that Stephen Kerr's Tory government at Westminster based its whole economic strategy on the low pay. Something this government, of course, has addressed.
Let's hear the Cabinet Secretary.
Has addressed with our support for the real living wage, which has, of course, driven up wages here in Scotland. It's also important to consider the package of support that we are providing in the round. So on average, households in the lower half of the income distribution are around £450 better off a year than they would be under UK tax and social security policies. Perhaps Stephen Kerr should occasionally listen to the answers. He may even learn something.
Mr Kerr, I would ask that when you put your question, you do listen with courtesy. Thank you. Mr Kerr. Question number 7, Miles Briggs.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government, in relation to the setting of budget allocations, what discussions the Finance Secretary has had with the NHS boards regarding the National Resource Allocation Formula?
Minister.
The NRAC formula is an objective measure of the need for healthcare services across Scotland. The formula provides target shares for regional NHS boards and has been in use since 2009-10 and is updated on an annual basis. As such, the Finance Secretary has not had any specific conversations with NHS boards regarding the formula. The approach taken by the Scottish Government has been to move boards towards parity gradually over a number of years. Since 2012-13, over £4 billion of additional funding has been committed to those NHS boards below their NRAC parity levels.
Miles Briggs.
I thank the Minister for that answer, but in recent years, MSPs and MPs from all parties have heard from NHS Lothian that the poor financial allocation, they are consistently seeing under-levelled performance of the National Resource Allocation Formula. This is consistently seeing our health board here in Lothian lose out, and now is the lowest funded health board per head of population in Scotland. Can I ask the Minister, what actions are Scottish Government taking, specifically in relation to NHS Lothian, given we see the highest levels of population growth anywhere in the country now? And will the Cabinet Secretary and Minister agree to meet with a cross-party group of MSPs and NHS Lothian to discuss the concerning financial sustainability issues of the board and the need for a population-based funding model if we're really going to meet the future service deliveries we need to see here in Lothian?
Minister.
Well, of course, the NRAC formula, which is updated regularly, takes into account population growth and indeed a whole range of other factors in its calculation. And with regard specifically to NHS Lothian, we've seen the board's funding move closer and closer to parity in each of the years since this matter has been under consideration by the Government. Indeed, NHS Lothian has seen an additional almost £130 million of parity adjustments over the last 10 years or so. So, as I say, the formula is in place. The Government's policy is that we move boards towards parity over time, and that is indeed the case with NHS Lothian, as it is with other NHS territorial boards.
Lee Rennie.
NHS Fife had a £55 million overspend in the last financial year after attempts to bring the budget under control failed. Why does the Scottish Government boast repeatedly about being able to balance its budgets when it's got direct control over NHS boards and is unable to do so on a repeated basis?
Minister.
Obviously, NHS boards are responsible for managing their own funds, and they've already indicated the basis upon which the funding is allocated to them. And a member should, of course, recognise that the NHS in Scotland receiving record funding from the Scottish Government as a consequence of the priority that we give to funding our health and social care services. So I've already indicated that the Scottish Government does, of course, balance its budget in the round, and the funding that we give to NHS boards through that NRAC formula is at record levels.
Fergus Ewing.
In the Highland, it is estimated by Highlands Enterprise that over the next decade or so there will be 18,000 additional jobs, mostly in the renewable sector, which could lead to around about 40,000 more people to add to the existing population. Will the Finance Secretary give that fair consideration in relation to the NRAC formula, given that NHS services in Highlands are bursting at the seams as it is?
Minister.
As I indicated, the NRAC formula will take into account population shifts over time, along with a range of other factors, including, of course, in the case of NHS Highland, the rural nature of the area that they cover. So the member can rest assured that that shift in population will be factored in to NHS funding and the NRAC formula going forward.
To number 8, Rhoda Grant.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it plans to allocate additional funding to Argyll and Bute Council in light of reports of Island Bute Health and Social Care partnerships funding deficit?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, of course, we appreciate the pressures facing health and social care, and that's why we've provided record funding for both health boards and local government in 2025-26. I understand that Argyll and Buttes Integration Joint Boards, Chief Officer and Chief Finance Officer are preparing a recovery plan which will be presented to the IJB at the end of May, and I welcome the fact that the Council is actively discussing all available options to support the partnership and ensure the continued delivery of critical services. The Scottish Government will continue to work with all partners to ensure that the people of Scotland continue to receive high-quality public services that they expect and deserve.
Rhoda Grant.
The Cabinet Secretary will be aware that Argyll and Bute Council still have to find £4.2 million to fill the gap in health services, while 500,000 worth of social work savings have to be found as well. Islanders face challenges in accessing health and social care services. Research also has shown that there is a worrying prevalence of health conditions in rural Scotland, such as Huntington's disease, where the north of Scotland is one of the highest rates in the world, 5 times the global average, yet has no specialist service in the Highlands for that condition. Therefore, I would ask what discussions she has had with her Cabinet colleagues around the forthcoming Islands Plan and whether that can be used to allocate additional funding to support island health and social care services.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I'm very happy to write to Rhoda Grant with a bit more detail, but she makes an important point about the role of the Islands Plan, and of course that has helped to lever in additional funding to some of our island communities. The issues that she has highlighted, and particularly some of the issues that are particular to more remote and rural communities, is something, of course, that we continue to look at and try to reflect in some of the funding formulas for allocation to our health and social care partnerships through the formulas for health, and indeed formulas for local government, which again has a reflection of rurality within it. One of the things, of course, that's been taken forward to address some of the pressures facing the sector more generally is the new Social Care Financial Viability Response Group, which has met weekly since February and comprises sector representatives and, of course, government as well, to make sure that we are working together to ensure the sustainability of services going forward. But I will write to Rhoda Grant with more detail specifically on the Islands Plan point that she makes.
Thank you. That concludes portfolio questions.